Hello and welcome back to the ocean. It is great to see you here. I have an incredible journey to share with you, my friend. From the high seas to the coral reefs, through wind, rain and shine, navigating victories and disappointments. This is an adventure through Australia's Whitsunday archipelago. What compels us in search of adventure? Is it to learn about our world, or instead to learn about ourselves? Adversity is a great teacher, and our ocean a harsh mistress. But smooth seas never made skilled sailors. Beyond your comfort zone, and outside of normality, lie the greatest personal discoveries. But excitement and enthusiasm can cloud judgment. Some mistakes leave scars for life. The objective of this video is to share, not just footage of me floating around on the ocean, but instead an insightful adventure. I want to share with you what I learned, what went right, what went wrong, and possibly the worst decision I have ever made. This video is by far the longest one I've ever done, but I'm not going to run any ads on it. I want you to be able to enjoy it uninterrupted for its entirety if you choose to do so. To be able to do this, I would like to thank our sponsor for this video. Nobody sponsors this channel. I'd like to, however, give a shout out to my parents and the people that crewed with us throughout this journey. Sean, Mike, Kath, and my parents, Evan and Penny. Thank you very much. We drop anchor, preparing to spend our first night on the boat at Stonehaven. In the morning, we plan on hitting the leeward side of the islands, hopefully finding some more sheltered waters. Go around that way a bit. After punching out through the waves, we find a nice spot behind one of the islands, sheltered from the wind and the swell. So you already know that the first thing on the agenda is going for a dive. This is Blue Neoprene channel.
I'll probably send it now. Sending it? Yeah. Wait, 1 second. Okay, and neutral, so good. Catch you later.
Diving in new places is extremely exciting, and you often don't know what to expect. Aside from reading a couple books and a few YouTube videos, I really didn't know what I was going to come across. My home country is New Zealand. Australia is our closest neighbour, but despite this proximity, the diving is extremely different. In this part of Australia, you're diving on coral reefs with tropical fish. This is literally my first dive down underwater in Australia. And what do we have? A shark. Lovely. I do love sharks, don't get me wrong, but very first dive in Australia sort of wasn't what I was hoping to see. This first spot that we're at is a marine protected area, which means no shooting fish. I still bring a spear gun with me usually to poke off sharks, but it doesn't usually come to that. What I'm trying to do while I'm diving this area is trying to familiarise myself with the species and the terrain. Ecosystems are full of intricacies and interactions, perhaps none more complicated than the coral reef, where there's so many different species, all working together and fighting one another for the space. Fortunately, similarities occur all over the world when it comes to finding fish. If you can find where the water's moving, head up current, that's where the fish will probably be. I hop back onto the tender to drop my dad at one of the nearby points. He says it's absolutely going off in there, so I gotta jump in and see for myself. To me, the most impressive thing about coral reefs is the variety. It's like any shape and colour of coral you can imagine is on the reef, and any colour and shape of fish you can imagine is also on the reef. These ecosystems also attract other creatures, seabirds, turtles and even whales. The entirety of this channel has been filmed on GoPro, but I have a hard time recommending it. It does leave a lot to be desired sometimes. I've used multiple generations of GoPro and they all have occasional issues with freezing. However, the Hero 8, on 2 occasions now, this is the second time, has flooded in the case and destroyed the GoPro. It's unfortunate, but luckily I had 2 GoPros. So the show continues. Back at the mothership, we get the rest of the crew on board.
It's deep and the viz sucks. I'd go in closer.
Here in the shallows of one of the island bays was a sight to behold. An unbelievable amount of fish, packed closely together up against the walls of the cliffs. When fish school up like this, it's a very interesting effect. It almost starts to become one organism, watching you with its many eyes, and reacting on a scale beyond the capacity of a single fish. Wild fish grouping together in such a gregarious way can make them look like an easy target. It can be very hard to single them out from the school. This behaviour is mesmerising to observe, but very confusing to try and hunt. Fish have a lateral line which runs across their entire body. It senses changes in water movement, as well as vibrations. When fish are all schooled, packed together like this, They can very easily feel what their neighbour is doing, allowing them to react spontaneously. So even if they can't see a predator, they can base their movements on what's happening around them. One fish has two eyes, but a school of this size is watching you from all around. There is no chance of hiding any aggressive movements. And the fish are going to react faster than you every time in this scenario. In spite of being what would appear to be an easy feed, I didn't see a single fish actually trying to hunt these bait. There wasn't a coral trout lurking on the edge of my vision, there wasn't a Spanish mackerel coming through, there was nothing, they were just being left alone in the shallows. Places where you find coral reefs will generally have better visibility than places with kelp or some other alternative, allowing for a great view down from the surface, where you can often locate swim-throughs and other structure on the bottom. I thought about this one here, but decided it probably wasn't worth it. By this point, I was starting to get a bit of a feel for what the underwater topography of the area is like. Often what you seem to find diving around the islands here will be a shallow reef extending a short way out from the islands, where there'll be a further drop off. Heading down this drop off here, and it's often where you're going to find some of the bigger fish on a front end of an area like this. If you can find a place like this with some current hitting it, you might be onto the big dogs. Finding smaller fish at the top of a ledge can be a great sign, but it's important not to scare them, which will result in scaring the larger fish that like to hang out below them. When spearfishing, we often go to great lengths to hide our intent from the fish that we're targeting, but we should also be considerate of the other fish around us, because everything's in constant communication. With a decent dose of salt water, we jump back on our boat, Pirate Peak, and start making the journey to Nara Inlet, an inlet that seems to have a bit of infamy in the area, being renowned for saltwater crocodiles and bull sharks. Two of the things that you definitely don't want to come across out here. These potential dangers can, however, be easily avoided, and Nara Inlet is renowned also as a great anchorage, being extremely sheltered. The conditions haven't been overly favourable so far. Tonight's going to be another windy one, so we're headed to Nara Inlet to drop anchor. Being on the ocean when it's like this is certainly not ideal, but if you're out there anyway, you may as well enjoy it. When you're sitting on the top of a boat or the front of a boat and you're heading through waves like this and you get a big splash in your face, it makes you feel so alive. Before they just give you a boat, they have to give you a pretty extensive safety rundown, including areas that you can and cannot swim, or rather shouldn't swim, one of which being Nara Inlet. But this is definitely not the first time in my life I've gone somewhere where you're not meant to be swimming.
Wouldn't it be a fun swim back if there was like 3 bull sharks chasing me? Yeah, exactly.
I would never admit to having a total disregard for law and order, but I would definitely consider myself a contrarian. And if you tell me I'm not meant to be swimming somewhere, it just makes me more keen. The rebellious attitude is somewhat quelled once I get in the water and see how green it is.
Nah, fuck that. I can't even see a meter. Yeah, I just couldn't even see the end of the gun, so I was like, nah. Water used to be a lot lower. Like the Great Barrier Reef is to the edge of Australia. All these islands are once connected. Do you want to have a little look around here? Or?
Australia is an interesting place, a beautiful place, but also a dangerous place. It is home to some of the planet's most dangerous animals. Bull sharks and saltwater crocodiles are worth mentioning, both of which are probably found here.
And those mangroves look like salty countries. I just can't see anything there. Like, it's literally half a metre of those. No, I think we're just fault there, eh? Yeah.
Welcome to the Nara Inlet. Got the inlet here, come up into the mountains, and we've got this cave. So allegedly these cave paintings that we have in here are like thousands and thousands of years old, from the ancient Aboriginal tribes that used to live in the area. Very interesting to learn about the archaeological history of this area. Truly fascinating. What this cave was used for exactly, we are not sure. However, the paintings inspire a lot of imaginative guesswork. So here is a representation of what they looked like prior to fading and tourism messing up the area. What was this area used for? I'm not sure. One can only speculate at this point in time. These people are long since gone, but their mysteries still remain. Ancient tribes and human civilizations may be regarded for the most part as primitive, but it's very likely that the people that called this place home knew things that today we can hardly fathom. They probably had a connection with the natural world in such a way that we just don't nowadays. It's better come back in time and communicate with these people. I'm sure a lot could be learned. It's a shame they're gone, but thank you for leaving us with this. Thank you for leaving us with your artworks. It is true that people have been here for a very, very long time. Every step that you take, people have probably walked it before. Where you lay your feet, people for thousands of years before you have. It's an incredible feeling. Throughout different generations of humans, information is passed down, but not everything. What your grandparents know, you do not know all of that. You might have learned some of the most important things, but a lot of stuff gets lost along the way. Across thousands of years of human civilization, there are many lessons, many stories, many tales, many revelations that are simply lost to time. These people will know things that we can't even fathom or really conceptualize, I'm sure. If I could ask the people that lived here one question, it would be, what is the purpose of life? I think that is a question that we spend so much time trying to work out ourselves, but it really is a complicated question. Despite what you were told, I can guarantee you the purpose of life is not to bang heaps of pretty women, make heaps of money, show off, all that sort of stuff. We are here for a higher purpose. And I'd be interested to know if these people had any insights or thoughts on that. Look at that. It's meant to be like that. That's crazy. Right angle, spiky plant. Madness. Kept the crew waiting a bit. We're heading down to the boat. Gonna head back to the main. Gotcha.
You don't want to pedal all that way.
I don't have a lot of faith in this.
Nearly too straight.
Yeah.
Alright crew, bit of an update for you. Once again, today the weather is not looking that nice, so pretty hard pressed finding where to go diving. We've spent a couple nights on the water now. I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown of the trip so far. So we started around here at Airlie Beach, headed out to Mole Island, went through Unsafe Passage, head up this way towards Stonehaven. We spent our first night here. Unfortunately the visibility wasn't great, so in the morning we headed around to Butterfly Bay where we got to get in the water for a little bit. Visibility wasn't great. It's a marine protected area, so we weren't able to shoot any fish unfortunately. However, the diving was spectacular. From there, yesterday in the evening we headed out to Nara Inlet. Tried to get in for a dive there, zero viz. Felt very bull sharky, saltwater crocodile country type area. It's advised that you don't swim there, so I jumped in, saw the viz, hopped out basically straight away. That is that. From there this morning, we headed down around this way and we are currently around here in Sid Harbour. As you can see, it's relatively sheltered, however the visibility is shocker. Goal is shoot a coal trout at some point. We're going to be heading to Hamilton Island this evening, going down this way around to Hamilton, base out of there for about 3 days, hopefully get out for a spearfish, see how it goes. The importance of a good anchoring system cannot be understated on a boat, especially important if you plan on spending a night on said boat. One of the worst things that can possibly happen is drifting on your anchor, ending up in the rocks while you're tucked away sleeping. It's worth familiarizing yourself in depth with all the equipment that you're going to be using. The system does vary depending on the size and type of the boat. Our vessel for this mission is Pirate Pete, a decent sized sailing catamaran. As with most sailing boats nowadays, it does have motors, which we're mostly going to be using. The winds during a lot of this trip were quite extraordinary. Winds in excess of what we would be comfortable with. However, sailing will come, I can promise you that.
At least you're in blue, so you got your fashion point going on still.
Heading towards Hamilton Island, we really had no choice but to head straight into the wind, which meant the swell also. As we approached the island, it got down, but it wasn't an overly pleasant journey out there. Our technology can do amazing things, and it's hardly an understatement to say that humans have conquered the planet, where we can traverse through any environment thanks to our technological advancements. How cool are boats? Thanks to the collective genius of humanity, we have vehicles that can take you further and faster than your legs ever could.
Stop! Okay, beautiful, got ya.
Oh, that was stressful.
Beautiful. Thanks, sir. No worries, guys. Mate, that was the first time parallel parking, mate.
So we've just pulled up to Hamilton Island, got the boat parked, did a bit of boat parallel parking, real nail biter, some expensive toys around here, man. Beautiful marina with some beautiful boats. Anyway, the weather here is looking stunning compared to what we've experienced the past couple of days. The next 3 nights we're going to be here in Hamilton Island, hopefully be able to get out for a spearfish in the meantime. This is an epic spot. Beautiful, feels like a tropical island, it's really nice, especially at the moment. Lovely to see that blue clear sky. Haven't had much of that the past couple of days, but it makes you appreciate it all the more when the sun comes back out to say hi. Hopefully y'all can hear me over the birds here. Hamilton Island is a pretty interesting place. You look out this way, you could be in the middle of nowhere. However, this way, the level of development is actually pretty incredible. It's not something you necessarily expect from a place this small, but there is a lot here, to be honest. Most of the island is this vast, expansive forest cascading down into the water, but a lot of it is very developed as well. Not really something you'd expect out here. But yeah, once again, you look out this way, scenic, beauty, nature. You look this way, human industry. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's an interesting contrast. We're off on a walk now to the second highest peak of Hamilton Island. Lovely trail, but I am having regrets about rocking it barefoot. Connect with the earth, feel nature, but these rocks do make it a little bit painful. Walking barefoot is good for your health. Look into grounding, it's pretty interesting stuff. However, it can be hard to break the norm. Rock it barefoot, people give you strange looks. You are an electrical being with an energy field. So is the earth. For thousands of years, throughout all of human history, we have been connected, working one another, discharging those negative electrons, getting that charge from the earth, grounding, being in constant connection. Up until recently, that has been the case. With the invention of rubberized soles in shoes, everything changed, and that's what people wear nowadays. No longer being in that continuous natural connection with the electrical current of our world. Energy and electricity is all around you, and you are a conductor. You are mostly water. You got no choice but to interact with that energy. When we disconnect ourselves from the earth's electrical field, we isolate ourselves, wear those rubber-soled shoes, all the energy that we bring into our body has nowhere to go, and it stays there. And that has some pretty detrimental health effects. Being in constant connection with the earth like this, connecting with Mother Nature, allows you to discharge a lot of that negative energy, which can have bad effects on your health if left for too long. If you're feeling a bit down, flustered, can't really think straight, go outside, get your feet wet, stand on the wet ground. You'll feel much better straight away. It's crazy. I think for the most part that we live in a lot of fear of the natural world. We don't want to go out when it's raining, we don't want to go out when it's windy, we don't want to get our feet dirty. We really are pretty afraid of nature, but it shouldn't be the case. Let's work together, not against each other. If we were meant to connect with the world, why would the largest pores on your entire body be on your feet? You are a sponge and a conductor. You take in the environment around you and share with it your energy. The way we are designed is not by mistake. Everything is for a reason. You are the way you are for a reason. Let's go. A couple spiders around. It's Australia, mate. What do you expect? Lots of spideys. Very windy, but man, what a view. Pretty incredible. Unfortunately, we got some real bad weather coming straight for us, so that's not great. However, we're going to have a good geeze off here first. It actually looks diveable down there, so I might be getting in later for that, hopefully. Well, unfortunately, the weather is making a fast track towards our location. You can probably see it in real time moving towards us. So that's not great, but hey, I'm not too afraid of getting wet. I dive is what it is, you know. It's looking pretty mint through there. Like, actually got some viz and whatnot. Might jump down, walk from the marina in my wetsuit, jump in there, scare off all the tourists and whatnot. I'm sure the resorts will love me. See what happens. Anyway, probably gonna get out of here before that hits, but I don't really think I have a chance in that regard. So I'll give you an update when the rain hits. All right, crew, here it is. When you get down off this mountain, else we get absolutely smoked out by the rain. Pretty nice this morning, but hey, you know, weather does what weather does. I'll bring back the sun if you don't mind. I wasn't done with it. All right, it's turned into a proper downpour now. Getting absolutely soaked. Got to keep moving though. Got to get stub my toe. I need to get down off this mountain. It's starting to get very wet. It's starting to get quite cold. If I stop moving, I'm going to end up getting hypothermia, so I got to keep going. Bring it on. I think that this might be exactly what I get for saying, oh, we shouldn't be afraid of the rain or something like that. Honestly, bro, this isn't much fun. Nah, it kind of is, to be honest. I'm enjoying it. It's all about the experience, you know. If it was easy, it wouldn't be worthwhile. If you can just jump on an escalator, get up there with no worries, there'd be no point. You know, just look at Google and like search up the images if you're gonna do that. You got little streams popping up. Let's go. Epic. Almost made it back to civilization. So this is pretty neat. Just come for a little walk down by the marina here, and there's a cute little stingray hanging out. How's that? It's a little beauty. What a lovely little creature. Alright guys, long awaited, highly anticipated. Finally going to be getting in the water for a spearfish. Goal today is shoot a coral trout off the main tourist beach here on Hamilton Island. I'm going to head into Cat's Eye Bay, get in, smash coral trout. Ever since I started spearfishing, that's been one of the dream fish for me. So to have the opportunity to come out here and hopefully get one, cannot wait. I always find it interesting gauging people's reactions when I'm walking around in a full spearfishing getup. It can be quite funny. As mentioned earlier, Australia is a dangerous place, but one of the animals that inhabits Australia just straight up isn't even fair. The Uricungi jellyfish. A deadly jellyfish that is only a couple of centimeters wide and transparent. Like, how do you even avoid that? Learning about some of Australia's gnarly wildlife, as well as encountering some of it during this trip, gave me more appreciation for living in New Zealand, where we don't have poisonous snakes, where we don't have bull sharks, where we don't have saltwater crocodiles, where we don't have Uricungi jellyfish. You could maybe argue that it makes the diving more exciting. And don't get me wrong, they are very cool animals in their own regard, but I don't like having to worry about saltwater crocodiles when I'm spearfishing. I thought I had managed to slip into the water unnoticed, but one of the lifeguards had seen me.
What's that? Nah, it's yellow.
It's green in the bay here.
Oh, okay.
Can't let you, unfortunately.
Oh, bugger.
If you go off Airport Beach or something, probably spearfish up there.
Nah, fair enough. I appreciate you telling me before I get up there. I mean, honestly, it's not even looking that great out there.
Oh, you
Can't
won't be able to
shit.
see anything that way in the busy stuff. Yeah, usually on the low tide when it's going back out, that's the best time.
Oh, well, off to the airport.
Probably best spot over there.
Alright, cheers, man. Have a good one. Hey guys, jumping on here to give a bit more context to yesterday's mission. It started out with a lot of ambition, a lot of excitement, but ended up ultimately in disappointment and almost breaking the law. So, while we've been here, this has basically been what we've been referring to, almost our Bible here for the Whit Sundays. There's a recent addition, all these lines are accurate and whatnot. You can see that all the islands are divided up into these different sort of color groups. Now we can have a look here to see what they mean. So most of them are green, yellow, etc. If we have a look down these yellow ones, we can see here limited spearfishing, snorkel only is allowed in the yellow areas. So I was based off the assumption that we could pretty much spearfish all around here. We're on Hamilton Island at the moment. I was living under the assumption that spearfishing was right here. However, I was unfortunately misinformed. I got no one to blame but myself. So that is page 110, but if we flip to page 90 here, do a bit more reading on spearfishing. Limited spearfishing is allowed only in these zones: light blue, dark blue and yellow. However, spearfishing is prohibited in yellow zones that lie within the public appreciation area. So let's see where this public appreciation area is. Basically almost the entire Whitsunday group. So I thought that spearfishing was alright through here, however it actually isn't, and we're very much limited on where we can go for spearfishing. Hopefully in the next couple of days we'll be able to get out to some of these areas where we can hit, but around here is a no-go. Unfortunately, well, as you can see, the rules are very much not clear. Line fishing is still allowed in most of these places, however spear fishermen have a very hard time out here for some reason. Even talking to people around here, people that live in this area seem very unclear on the rules themselves. So before going on the mish to Cat's Eye Bay, I asked some people here at the local dive store if they could recommend any spots to head out to. Recommended Catside Bay. I asked them, is spearfishing allowed here? They told me, yeah. So they weren't too clued in either. People working here on the dive shop, they don't really seem to know what they're talking about, unfortunately. I asked the other couple people around. I walked all the way through town with my spearfishing gear. No one really batted an eye until I get to the beach. And then old mate tells me I can't spearfish, and I'm like, nah mate, I've got the book, I know the rules, I've been reading them. It's a yellow zone, I can spearfish here. I was absolutely in the wrong. However, he then recommended me I go to Airport Beach, which is an absolute shocker. The rules that they have around here in terms of spearfishing are absolutely ludicrous. Like, I can't believe it. There's some dumb rules out there, but these ones, unbelievable how difficult they make it to go out and shoot a fish. Like, Australians must feel like they're going to go to jail when they just even see a coral trout. It's crazy. So in the entire Whitsunday group, within this public appreciation area, there are a couple places that we can spearfish. We can go here, 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 in there, Den Island, and that's really about it, to be honest. However, everything else, you can go line fishing, whatever, that's all good, just avoid the green areas. Everything yellow, you can line fish, but you can't spearfish. So I don't really understand what the point of that is. I think that for the most part, spearfishing has a lot less environmental impacts than line fishing. We're not full pirates, we're borderline pirates. So luckily I haven't broken the law at all. I might have gone swimming with my spear gun, but haven't killed any fish, so it is what it is. Hopefully the next couple of days, get out for an actual spearfish, shoot a coral trout. That's something I've been sticking out for the whole time I'm here. But man, the rules are very hard to understand. Like all these different color zones, all these things, the public appreciation areas, all these boundaries and lines, it's really hard to navigate. And even the people that live here don't really seem to understand the rules that well. I like New Zealand, how we have areas you can catch fish, areas you can't catch fish. I'm here to enjoy it. I'm not gonna go on a holiday just to break laws and shoot fish because it's not really worth it. So, it sucks. I would love to get out here for a spearfish. It looks lovely, but it just wasn't meant to be. In the next couple of days, you better get out and onto the fish. Hello and welcome back to the land. It's great to land you here. My name is Daniel. We're currently here on Hamilton Island attending the business conference. Talk some money, run some numbers, you know how it is. Just the day in and days out of Daniel. Should be a good one.
Are you going tonight?
Sorry?
Are you going today?
We're not going to the city of churches, we're going to the city of wineries. Adelaide.
Well guys, I gotta say, it's been a great business conference out here on Hamilton Island. I go to quite a few business conferences, but this one is definitely one to remember. I'm gonna be heading back to the boat now. We've got the big party on tonight. Gear up, tomorrow morning we're getting out of here. Back out from Hamilton Island onto the high seas and you'll see blue once again.
Let's bring it down a little bit, ladies and gentlemen.
Good side song and make it back. Na 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 na. Need somebody help me sing it. Na 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 na. I'm gonna shout it with them shit. Anybody that sings all night long.
So this will, with the wind, will have a little bit of a pull on it.
Hamilton Island, what a cool place. Thank you for having us. But it is time that we return out into the open ocean, in search of adventure and in search of fish. Leaving Hamilton Island, the conditions weren't great. But with such a big group of islands, there's always going to be somewhere sheltered, or at least more sheltered than the rest. After a bit of an expedition heading up to the northern area, we managed to find some nicer waters. From atop Pirate Peak looking out towards the land, I can see the reef structure fringing. It's got me pretty excited. Coral reefs are beautiful, but also incredibly delicate marine ecosystems. Here in the Whitsundays, in most bays, you're actually not allowed to anchor. However, there are public moorings available for you to use. A mooring is generally going to be a very heavy weight on the bottom, with a rope attached to it going to the surface where there's a buoy. The idea is you attach to these, as opposed to putting your own anchor and rope down along the bottom, where it has the chance to drag and destroy the terrain around it. By using these moorings, you're doing a lot less damage to the area. In fact, basically none at all. I think it's a great system personally, but you don't really see it in New Zealand. What if in all the bays around the Hauraki Gulf we were to install moorings to stop damage to the bottom when boats come and anchor up?
A bit of heartbreak, a bit of miscommunication with the lures. It's very hard to work out where we can actually go for a spearfish. But at the moment, we're onto it. It's looking great out there. Hopefully get in, shoot that coral trout. I've been looking for the whole trip and I'm pretty excited to go. This place is not catered very well towards spearfishermen. However, getting out here today, we should be into the fish. So I'm looking forward to getting into it and going for a proper dive.
As we pulled up to the spot initially, visibility was looking very good. However, it seemed to be changing and very quickly. By the time I'd got into the water, it had become quite murky and quite silty. This area is one of the channels between two of the islands, so it gets a lot of tidal movement through here, which can be great for marine life. Fish love it. You can see here the coral is just going crazy because of this current that comes and feeds it. In places where you get more current, the bottom's going to be more stirred up, you're going to get more silt, the visibility is usually not going to be as good, and you can't see as much. Scary diving. When you know there's a lot of fish around, there's a lot of life, but you're not sure where it is because you can't see it. As well as the visibility not being great, I was having really bad mask issues. Opting to take one of the rentals that was thrown on the boat, I was met by an impenetrable wall of fog, obscuring my vision.
Alright, should we get to go? Oh, this is way better. Yeah, I can actually see.
My parents were kind enough to run the tender over and bring me one of my own masks, something I should have been wearing from the very get-go. The mask is possibly the most important piece of your freediving kit. Without it, you're very useless. And that's not even an understatement. Try go diving without a mask, see what happens. You're not going to have a good time. Fins you can get away with, snorkel, I mean you could live without it, but a mask, you really can't do much without a mask. Finding a good diving mask that fits you and is comfortable is paramount to your enjoyment and success in freediving. Do not overlook this. If you have a mask that doesn't fit you right or isn't comfortable, go out and buy a new one, because you're doing yourself a serious disservice by not having a proper dive mask. The spot being in a channel, it naturally becomes a bit of a bottleneck for boats, and upon hearing one, I quickly returned to the surface, eager to not be run over. If anything's going to kill you out there, it's probably either going to be yourself or a boat, not a shark or some big angry fish. Keep your wits about you and dive sensibly. And do not mess with boats, because they will win every time. Looking out into the hazy abyss, I wonder what is going to swim my way. Watching in anticipation until something catches my eye from the right hand side. Oh my god, what is that? Oh, okay, mackerel, that's alright. I'm not going to lie though, that fish scared the out of me. I am not used to seeing silhouettes like that, and the first thing that went through my mind is shark. I start to get a little bit more confident, moving out to the deeper areas of water, where upon reaching the bottom, more times than not, there's huge clouds of sand and dust. I don't know what sort of creatures I'm disturbing down here, but they seem to be quite large. First time diving in Oz, I don't really know what's down here. I'm just trying to not get eaten and maybe find something to eat myself. Before you shoot a fish, you gotta consider the scenario. How realistic is it to be able to get that fish, land it without any problems? I'm quite far away from the boat. The visibility isn't that great. I don't know what's out there. This blue spot tusk fish swims by. I know these are good to shoot. People love shooting and eating them. But I just don't have the confidence to take that shot right now. I feel like if I take that shot, a big shark's going to swim out of the murk, smash the fish, smash me. I don't really know what's going to happen. One of my favourite quotes or sayings is, if there is any doubt, there is no doubt at all. If you have doubts about shooting the fish, there is no doubt at all. Don't shoot the fish. Only do it when you're feeling confident, when you know it's going to work. I did not rate my chances of getting that fish to the boat problem free, so I didn't shoot it.
Alright guys, freshly out of the water at the spot here. I gotta say, that is one of the scariest dives I've ever done in my entire life. Oh my gosh. So, murky water, it just didn't feel right. Like the vibes were not there, you know. Sometimes it's not all about what you see, but what you feel. It did not feel safe to me out there. Lots of big fish going down every drop, just seeing like target species, but I didn't want to shoot any of it because I felt like I was just going to get like attacked. It felt like suicide shooting fish at that spot, to be honest with you. It was fun. The coral life was amazing. There are some amazing fish around, and I'm glad to have got in, but I'm very glad to have got out as well. Like, it just wasn't the one there. When we first got to the spot, while we were pulling up in the boat, the visibility was looking alright, but as the tide has increased, it's actually gotten significantly worse, I'd say. It was cool to be out there, but cool to be out, cool to be alive. There are a few fish that we could have got. Saw the black spot tusk fish, saw some sort of a mackerel, some trevally, some snappers, all sorts, but it made me feel like there was other things around as well. So it didn't help the fact that we're warned about sharks in this area prior to. So this is a rental yacht. We check in occasionally with base. We told them, hey, we're here, we're going to be jumping in for like a snorkel. And they said, hey guys, do it on your own accord, because in this area there's a lot of sharks. And I mean, I don't necessarily mind sharks personally. I think sharks are pretty cool, but man, it was scary. Oh, also mask drummers, major mask drummers. So over in Samoa recently, the mask I've been using for the past year has sort of come to the end of my life. The end of its life is starting to split, letting water in and that. It's a shame. That mask has served me well, so I've been using a couple different ones. I brought 2 different masks along with me for this trip, both of which have been fogging up astronomically, so I decided to bring one of these rental ones along with me that we have just here for the boat. I thought that'd be better. I could not see anything. I was out there like on the edge of the reef looking out towards the boat and I couldn't see it. Luckily my parents were kind enough to jump on the tender, run one of my masks over. I put that on, but it was constant clearing that fog out of it and trying to see what was around me. Uncomfortable diving, super uncomfortable. It's all been a bit of a journey, so thank you for being here with me. With Sundays, like, yo, Great Barrier, flat seas, clear water, all that jazz, you know, all that stuff we like. But honestly, it's sort of been total opposite. Expectation is the root of all disappointment, I believe. Set your expectations low and you'll never be disappointed. Have no expectations at all and you'll always be stoked. I got ahead of myself. The wind here at the moment is really starting to chop up, so we're going to have to get out of here and find another anchorage for the night.
When you're out on the ocean, it will throw many curveballs at you, weather being the main one. You're constantly having to adjust and find different places, working out new plans on the fly. It may seem daunting, stressful, frightful even, but I think at the same time it's very freeing. It keeps you engaged, living in the moment, each day to the next. You deal with what's there in front of you and try to make the most of it. Every day you're waking up looking for the best weather, looking for the best place to take the boat and experience this amazing place. You are living in the moment, out there on the ocean, and it's so awesome. I feel like people nowadays live lives with so much distraction, myself included, where we're lost in places that don't exist, whether it be places on the internet or within your own mind. To be trapped in the past, regretting past decisions, lamenting over them and resenting yourself gets you absolutely nowhere. You cannot change the past. Spending too much time in the future can be just as detrimental. A place of endless possibility, overwhelming in fact, enough that you can feel paralyzed in this very moment if you think about it too hard. We need to avoid getting lost in these places and remember that the only thing that we can control is what is right in front of us right now. This present moment is the only thing that you have any influence over. So that's the most important. That should be where our attention is, not in the past that we cannot change, not in the future that will paralyze us with fear. We need to act in the moment. It's important to consider what may happen in the future. It's important to learn from your mistakes, but we cannot be living in those places. We cannot live in the past or the future, because this moment right here, what's right in front of you, when you look down at your hands, that is the only thing that you have any influence over. Putting yourself through novel, new, stressful, eventful, exciting experiences brings you back to the present moment. When I'm out there diving, I can't think about much else rather than what's right in front of me. I'm right there. I'm not somewhere else. It's challenge and risk that keeps you on your toes. If what's happening in front of you in the present moment is stimulating and captivating, you're not going anywhere. It demands you to be there. It's when we encounter situations in our life where we're not stimulated, where we're not engaged, where our brains go wandering, that we end up in these different places. This location is called Mackerel Bay, and swimming on the surface, can you believe it, some mackerel came through. I was quick to make a shot at what looked like the biggest one, hitting it right in the spine. In spite of crippling this fish, it still had so much vigor. It makes me wonder what the fight would have been like had I shot it somewhere else. But I didn't really want to find out. I was happy with my shot, happy to get that fish secured nice and quick. Happy to get that fish in the float boat as soon as possible before any biters can turn up. The most difficult part of the ordeal was actually removing the shaft from the fish. It can often get a bit frantic at this point. When you shoot a big fish, your body gets full of adrenaline, ready to fight off those sharks or whatever else wants to get it. But your dexterity suffers as a result. The feeling this fish gave me was huge. I was full of adrenaline. I was practically shaking at this point. I was waiting for that big shark to come and try steal it or whatever else. But the thrill of shooting this fish in new waters without knowing what's around, bro, awesome. Like, that fish sent me over the moon. So happy. Nice fish, that one, but it's not the dream fish. It's not the coral trout that we came here looking for. But I'm stalking one now. I've followed it through this little cave out to the other side where I'm watching, waiting, but I don't get the shot that I'm looking for. One of my main goals for this trip is to not miss or injure fish. It's a horrible feeling, but it's even worse when you go overseas and do it. The intent with my diving this trip is to be clean and to be precise. To not miss and not injure. Thus, I'm not taking shots that I'm not confident in. This fish was here, presented kind of. I could have maybe taken a shot, but it wasn't quite happening. I wait, I keep watching, I see it down here on the ledge, I'm waiting for my opportunity, but it's not something I want to rush into too hard. I don't want to injure this fish and I don't want to miss it. I make an extension down to the bottom, coming towards it, but the fish doesn't want anything to do with me. It takes off, and that's okay. We'll find some more in the future. Coral trout seem to be very abundant out here on the reefs, however less so in this particular area. Being one of the few spots that actually allows spearfishing, it's likely these fish have seen spearfishermen before, and they already know what I'm up to. Thus, they're more cautious, and you don't see as much of them. It really is a stark contrast, diving here and diving some of the more protected areas, especially in regards to how the coral trout act. In other places, coral trout can be easy to swim up to. You can find big ones everywhere. But you come to this spot, and suddenly they're a lot more scarce, a lot more scared, a lot more wary. Smart fish, clearly. Moving out of the bay and towards the open water, I start diving down the side of a huge ledge. This ledge acts as basically a mirror for the sounds of whales far out to sea. You can hear them, you can feel it even. In your body you can feel the vibrations that these whales are making, however far away. It's incredible. And all throughout the reef you can hear it. This chorus. Absolutely stunning diving out here on the reef, as always. But this time we got a fish. So, even better. Climbing back aboard Pirate Pete, I can feel quite accomplished. However, the main goal is yet to be achieved. While the coral trout was the absolute pinnacle of what I was looking for, mackerel is definitely second. We don't get mackerel this size in New Zealand, so I was quite excited to have a crack at one.
Oh, yes!
It's not a coral trout, but
Oh, what kind of tune is that?
mackerel of some sort.
Oh, you beauty. What I mean?
Find it, grab it, cut the gills, and float right straight away.
Absolutely incredible looking fish. Razor sharp teeth. Smooth and streamlined. But the colours were absolutely incredible. Yellow and blue.
Alright crew, it's update time. Last night we spent the night at anchor. Unfortunately we ended up drifting on the anchor. So it was quite a long night, staying up, watching it, making sure we didn't end up in the rocks, and then this morning we punched out to a spot that we could dive. Managed to get into the water and it was phenomenal. Managed to shoot a fish. Spectacular. I'll show you guys what I got. Got our friend here, some sort of a mackerel, not sure exactly. I'm thinking either a sharky mackerel, school mackerel, Spanish mackerel. We've measured it to about 80 centimeters plus, so regardless of what it is, it's a legal fish, but what a beauty. The colors on this thing are incredible. Real stoked to have landed that. Hit it in the spine, basically finished the fight pretty quickly, and the meat on there is looking real tasty. We're currently here at Butterfly Bay. Getting here wasn't really much fun. We had to pull the pin pretty early at the spot that I was diving because the weather was turning pretty bad, but we managed to get in and it's looking real nice now. Real dusty morning, had bugger all sleep, got up early, pulled the anchor, headed out to the spot, but managed to get onto a fish, so I'm stoked about that. Saw a coral trout, almost got the coral trout. Gonna cook this one up tonight probably, give it a try. First fish here in Australia, so I'm real stoked. So unfortunately, old mate here in this float boat managed to nail me pretty good with his teeth. Not used to such bitey things as they do over here in Australia, you know. In New Zealand we don't really have anything that has super sharp teeth. I'm used to shooting kingfish, putting my hand in the mouth, but over here it's not such a good idea. Managed to get me pretty good even through the relatively thick gloves that I'm wearing. I'm glad I didn't wear the gardening gloves, thank God. Anyway, got my mum to patch me up here and we should be alright. Pretty hard spot to fill it fish.
Early into this video, I alluded to making a huge mistake. Here it is. Here is the story of how I gave myself decompression illness. We pull up to Butterfly Bay. It's looking picturesque. We assemble our dive gear, ready to get into the water. Upon smelling the air, I can tell something is wrong, but I decide to go ahead with the dive. When we first arrived in Airlie Beach, we went to the local dive store to pick up some dive tanks. The owner was very friendly and we followed him to the back of the shop. When an alley behind the shop was the compressor room. Compressors need to be in well ventilated areas, and this just didn't seem like it to me. Without fuss, we took the tanks and continued on our way. Only upon getting to our dive site and assembling all our gear ready to get into the water did I inspect the quality of the air that we had. My tank did not smell right, but I went against everything I've learned, everything I've taught, and against so much common sense and wisdom, I decided to dive on the tank anyway. To be in this spot and to have so much anticipation for the dive, it would have been difficult to pull the pin and decide not to do it, but I did it anyway, and I had to pay a big price for it. Decompression illness, also known as the bends, is caused by barometric trauma to the body, or pressure related. It is most commonly experienced by scuba divers, however, freedivers can encounter it, as well as people ascending to high altitudes. As you descend through the water column and you're breathing compressed air through a scuba diving cylinder, changes happen in your body. The amount of saturated gases in the tissues in your body will vary depending on the depth, and it takes time to adjust. If, for instance, you were to go down deep on scuba and your tissues become saturated with nitrogen, you begin an ascent at a very fast rate. All that nitrogen that's dissolved in your tissues has to go somewhere, and if there's too much of it, that's going to do some serious damage. When I was 13 years old, my dad pulled me out of school and took me to do my open water scuba diving course. Coming up on 10 years now and I'm still in love with it. Long before spearfishing and shooting fish, I was out there looking for the craze. Since my early days of diving, I kept with it and eventually became a scuba diving instructor. I've gone through a few scuba cylinders, but none of them have tasted this bad. This one was not right and I knew it straight from the get-go. I had all the information that I needed to make the right decision at that moment, but yet I made the wrong one. I'll talk about the experience now from a physical sensation point of view. The taste was not good. Breathing that in through your mouth every couple seconds, not an enjoyable experience. Plus, I was actually quite cold. I was wearing a 3mm wetsuit. While it was warm over there, 22 degrees, when you're down on scuba, away from the sun and the suit compresses a bit, I did end up getting quite cold throughout this dive. Earlier in the day, I had gone for the spearfish and shot that Spanish mackerel. That night, we had drifted on our anchor, so got very little sleep. I was tired, I was cold, and the air wasn't right. Those are some of the factors that went into the symptoms that I went on to experience. Tiredness and being cold, you can draw a clear correlation between that and decompression illness. However, when it comes to contaminated air, and I believe beyond the shadow of a doubt that this air was contaminated with something, it becomes a lot more difficult to kind of diagnose or work out. It's just such an unpredictable factor in there. During freediving, your body does experience pressure changes. You're not usually at depth for long enough or with enough gases to really have to worry about your tissues loading up with nitrogen. You should absolutely avoid freediving after scuba diving because your tissues are going to be loaded up with gases and then you're going to be putting yourself through immense pressure changes. It's generally believed that freediving before scuba diving is okay. I wouldn't personally vouch for it given my own experience here. This is the deepest point in the dive, 18 meters. As you descend, the air inside your mask will compress and will squeeze onto your face. In order to even out this pressure, you breathe some air out of your nose. As I did this, it smelled absolutely awful. Once you're down deeper, the partial pressure of the gases inside of what you're breathing increases dramatically. At this depth, I'm breathing in the equivalent of almost 3 times the amount of contaminated air would be on the surface. And at this point, I'm feeling awful and it's like, we need to turn tail and get out of here. But we didn't do it soon enough. It was a bit of a dilly-dally because obviously the marine life was absolutely stunning. Had I realised the severity of the situation, I would have been out of there a lot sooner. At the time, my mental state was incredibly clouded. Being both cold and tired and breathing this contaminated air, I wasn't really thinking straight. It does give me a strange feeling watching this footage back. It's so beautiful, but yet at the same time, I regret it so much and I wish I was never there. I shouldn't have been there. And knowing the long-term suffering that this caused me, it's kind of heartbreaking. It almost feels like I'm a race car driver watching a footage of like one of his old crashes, seeing the car speeding into the corner. That's what this feels like to me. We work our way back up the reef, completing our 5-minute safety stop before fully ascending to the surface. At this point, I know I have a serious problem. Initially, I failed to pull myself up onto the duckboard, something I should usually be able to do quite easily. Upon getting aboard, it's immediately apparent to all the other people that I am not well. I'm shaking, I am so incredibly physically weak, I just have to put a blanket around me and just sit there, trying to recuperate myself. Alright, it's pretty dark, so let's talk about silver linings. Giant trevally came to check out the boat. And by giant trevally, I mean giant trevally, this thing was huge. But my favourite silver lining was, my dad didn't experience any symptoms really. He got out of the water and he was fine. His tank did have a bit of a smell to it, but it wasn't as bad as my own. The next day I was feeling pretty rattled, but still wanted to get into the water. It always makes me feel better. The plan for this dive is not leaving the surface. I do not want to expose myself to any more pressure. At this point I suspect that I've contracted decompression illness, but I wasn't really taking it seriously enough. Decompression illness can manifest many different symptoms, depending on the person and where the bubbles are coming from or trapped. Some common symptoms that are experienced during decompression sickness are abnormal fatigue, pain in joints, shortness of breath, itchy skin, confusion, unconsciousness, tremors, amnesia, and even, in severe cases, death. Luckily, instances of decompression illness are rare, and if you do the right things, you pretty much never have to worry about it. Upon exiting the water that evening and for some of the day after, I was experiencing the initial symptoms of decompression illness. As they subsided, I started to believe that I was in the clear, and kind of put it on the back foot. So that's what we'll do for now. We'll get back to talking about the actual diving. Swimming over a shallow area of broken coral, I encounter a huge school of small wrasse. I follow them around as they continue on their grazing. Very interesting to watch, very cute fish. I'm enjoying my time with them. Just taking it real easy this dive and seeing what's around. While these fish are interesting, there's one fish that I'm always in the search of out here. The coral trout. This is a no-take area, which means they're going to be a bit friendlier. It's a good opportunity to get nice up close and personal with these fish and try and understand some more about them. So what have I learned so far? In general, these fish prefer to hang out on the bottom around bottom structure. They're not a fish that you're really going to see swimming mid-water, coming at you out of the blue like a mackerel of some sort. Coral trout are curious, but like all fish, they like to have a bit of distance as well. Coral trout will spook if you get too close, but they often don't seem to spook far, going into a bit of reef and holing up, or just dashing a short distance and turning to look at you again. I'm following this one here, hoping it's going to lead me somewhere. And sure enough, he shows me his house, says a quick goodbye, dashes inside, never to be seen again. Coral reefs are incredible, so different to diving on the kelp that we usually have in New Zealand. It's like a whole different flavour of ocean out here. You only have to see it for yourself to understand the beauty and the power that lays here, to understand why these places need to be protected. And I think Australia, for the most part, is doing a pretty good job at it. These places are incredible, and it seems like they're going to stay that way. As the sun peaks below the mountains, life emerges from all the cracks and crevices on the reef. All the fish come out to play and have a feed before the sun finally goes down and darkness sets in, before the larger predators move onto the reef to scrounge out whatever hasn't found a place to hide. These fish are making the most of it. But it's also time to start heading back to the boat, because I don't want to be out here when it gets dark either. When I think of coral usually, I think of a hard, branched object, sort of like a miniature tree. But when you go out there and you see coral in its natural environment, it takes on so many different shapes and forms, and colours and movements. There really is so much diversity in the corals. The ocean truly is a place of endless possibilities, and you've never seen it all, especially not till you've seen these wrasse. These are absolutely huge. Aside from things like sharks, dolphins and huge stingrays, I haven't seen anything this big in the water. This has definitely got to be the biggest true fish that I've ever seen. But it wasn't particularly friendly. I couldn't get as close as I liked, but as I say sometimes, you don't get big by being dumb. Out here on the reef, these fish are protected in all places. That means no catching them with a spear gun, no catching them with a fishing rod if you can avoid it. Being such large fish, they obviously become a target for trophy hunters. Generally these fish are quite friendly, they don't provide that much of a challenge, and being such a large fish, it's likely they take a very long time to reach sexual maturity, making them incredibly vulnerable to pressure if it were allowed. If these fish were allowed to be spared, there's a very good chance a lot of people go out there trying to shoot the biggest ones they possibly could, and you decimate the population for many years to come. Even from an economic point of view, it's worth having these fish around. When people come out to the reef and they go scuba diving or free diving or snorkeling or whatever it may be, and you see a Napoleon wrasse, you're going to remember it. These fish leave a huge impression on you, and they end up on postcards, they end up on Instagram. They really do promote the place very well. The next morning we're up early and heading back to Mackerel Bay. Conditions at this point in the trip are starting to turn up. They are starting to look great. The sea's flattening off, the wind's dying down. Upon arriving in Mackerel Bay, we grab one of the moorings, avoiding putting our anchor down and damaging the fragile reef below.
Oh, this looks epic.
At this point I recorded the intro for the video. Here's a blooper. Believing that I had escaped the clutches of decompression illness, me and my dad were in the water for a spearfish.
Yep.
Conditions this day are better than the previous dive that I did here. A few days ago we were here in Mackerel Bay and managed to shoot a mackerel. Let's see what we can get this time. I'm sure you get it by now, but allow me to reiterate. The goal fish is a coral trout. That's what we're after. On the previous expedition to Mackerel Bay, I was able to locate a cave that was home to some coral trout. Here I am heading down to the bottom, a small ways from the entrance of the cave. I am predicting that outside of the cave there are going to be some coral trout. So, as opposed to swimming directly over the spot and taking a drop right on it, where I'm probably going to scare the fish, I've decided to go a little bit further away and work my way across the bottom where I have less chance of spooking them. There are so many fish around me right now, they're not what I'm after. However, I do not want to scare them. The coral trout will be watching the body language of the other fish around in the area. If they seem threatened, the coral trout is going to feel that way as well. As I make my way over the crest on the reef, I get a glimpse of the cave. Right outside it is a coral trout, what do you know? It's seen me and it doesn't like the look of me, so it starts heading deeper into the cave. I can see the silhouettes of 2 coral trout, but they have definitely seen me. I need to try approach them here, but not too quickly. Initially I think about going into the cave, but the trout make it clear they're not going to stick around, so I opt to go over the top where the rock can provide some cover for me. Looking over the other side, I'm hoping a coral trout's going to be there waiting for me. They're off in the distance and heading even further away. We'll have to try again. Coral reefs are deceptively difficult biomes to hunt. What may appear like a flat bottom from the surface branches out into fractals as you get closer, with many crevices and openings for fish to hide. The increased visibility that you generally find in these areas makes it easier for the fish to spot you, and when they do, if they don't like the look of you, they're heading into the reef and you're not going to see them. This dive was on to one of the ledges overlooking the open area on the other side of the cave. I'm scanning, looking for the coral trouts, but realistically they're probably out of here by now. I keep descending, wanting to check out the cave further. While the fish are gone, there is still valuable information to be ascertained. What about this particular rock structure appeals to the coral trout? If I can understand that, I will increase my chances of finding them in the future. Understanding the fish that you're targeting comes down to more than simply understanding the fish. You gotta understand the structure that fish likes, what sort of other species that it associates with, and other factors that go into it. It's not just fish behavior, but a whole range of things that you have to consider in order to successfully target a species. This rocky labyrinth really does open up once you get down to it, and you can see just how many places there are for the fish to go. Anything could be in the back of a cave such as that, and you would never see it. You may recall early in this video there was a swim through that I didn't go through, and you might have been disappointed, but here's one to satisfy your craving for swim throughs. Heading down through the rocky, narrow passage, I plan on emerging on the other side, without snagging myself and getting caught in the cave, drowning forever. Why did I choose to do this one and not the other one? The circumstances. This day I was diving with my dad. He was right on the surface watching me. If anything went wrong, there was a chance he could have been able to help me, but when you're on your own, the margin for error is incredibly small. I don't mess with caves and swim throughs if I'm by myself, it's simply not worth it. After listening to the whales for a bit, it's time to head back to the surface. Returning to the world of air through the narrow passage once again. At the surface this day, there was an incredible amount of marine invertebrates, including but not limited to jellyfish. Managed to get one of those on the lips. On the drop here, we managed to spot a sea turtle. Sea turtles are incredibly cool, don't get me wrong, I always love seeing them. When you're diving out here in the tropics, they sort of become a bit of a background. They're almost like how you find stingrays or eagle rays in New Zealand. They're just out there when you're diving. Another creature that is out there on the reef is the crown of thorns starfish. Here is one here. These things are known to destroy coral reefs, eating coral at immense rates. Some people do recommend killing them. I'm not sure what the management plan in this area is, and I didn't want to do anything I wasn't supposed to, so I left it to continue on its day. If you know more about the subject, please let me know. Let me know whether I should have killed it, or whether I was right to just let it continue on its day. The overpopulation and subsequent destruction of the reef by certain marine creatures is due to an imbalance in the whole ecosystem, rather than simply a bad species. Rounding the corner, the rock recesses into a small cavernous area. Upon closer inspection, we find, what do you know, a coral trout. Sitting in the mouth of the cave, the trout watches me. I don't take the shot. I'm not confident on the size or shooting this fish straight into the rocks. So the search continues once more, but not before old mate comes for another quick geeze. The hunt continues. Up and down rocky structure, I pursue the infamous, elusive even, coral trout. Descending on pressure points, finding everything I hope to find, but what I hope to find most. Beautiful fish, coral and marine life surround me from all sides, but I have tunnel vision. I am looking for one thing and one thing only, because by this point of the trip, the doubts are starting to set in. Am I going to get the coral trout? Am I going to get the opportunity that I've been waiting for this entire time? You gotta keep trying, you gotta persevere and do your best, because if you don't, if you give up, if you fold, then the dream dies and it's never going to happen. You gotta make it happen for yourself. As you grow older, you become more independent, relying less on other people, having to fend for yourself and make your own dreams a reality. When you realize it really is just you against the world, it can be daunting or depressing, knowing that your life is in your own hands. But would it even be a life if you were just being controlled by other people? If your actions were entirely dictated by other people, are you really living? Your family and friends do have influence over you, as well as other things, government and social media. But what it comes down to is at the end of the day, it's your decision. You have free will, and you always have. There is no one more at blame for the circumstances that you're in than yourself, because you have the ultimate control over your own life. Taking responsibility for yourself and your actions is a huge key to personal growth. You cannot live in a world of blame, where you're constantly accusing others for the situation that you are in. No one is in a better position to help you than yourself. You cannot be waiting for people to come and save you. You may think that the world revolves around you, but the truth is, the world revolves around everybody. Every person has their own world that revolves around them, and most of the time they're going to be too busy to help you out. Everyone's going through their own struggles and issues, and expecting people to put everything down to come and save you is unrealistic. Let's use an example. Let's say that you're doing hard drugs all day, every day, but you don't think that you have the power to make the decision to quit. You're waiting for somebody to come and save you, to snatch the pipe or the needle out of your hand or whatever it may be. Do you think waiting for something like this is realistic? Or do you think you'd die a sad death before your knight in shining armor comes to save you? Taking responsibility for your own life clears a lot of mental baggage. You spend less time pointing fingers, running in circles, trying to answer questions that'll just keep you occupied and distracted. If you can point the finger at yourself, you're done. There are aspects of my own life that I am unhappy about, but would do me no service by trying to blame these problems on other people and pointing fingers. You gotta realize that the situation that you're in is a culmination of many years of independent decisions on your behalf. The situation I am in is by no accident. I am responsible for the situation that I'm in, and if I want to change it, I have to do it myself. It may seem like a very narrow or self-contained idea of the world, but the reality is, you want to help people. Everybody wants to help people. But in order to do that, you have to build yourself up first. If you're not a person with integrity and strength, someone who can't be relied upon, you're not going to be doing service to the people that you want to care for. In order to look after the people that you love, you have to build yourself up first. Build a strong foundation and be able to support those people. Not be weak and fragile and blaming. Tall and independent like a big strong tree. Then you can help out. Then you can branch out. To understand the world, you first have to understand yourself. Changing your life starts with changing your mind. Look within before you look outward. Master yourself and you can master anything you put your mind to. It all begins from within. If you want to change the world, you first have to change yourself. Alright, enough of the hippie, it's back to spearfishing. From the surface, I've spotted a coral trout. In this crevasse, I'm heading down slowly from the top, employing the dive bomb technique to try and get close to this fish and put a shot in. It spooks. I make my way onto the bommy, watching down into the little gutter. At the front end of the gutter, the coral trout has moved out into the open area and now swung right around the side of the second bommy here. I'm going to try and maneuver my way over the top of the rock, hoping to intercept the trout on the other side. Even though I'm out of view of the trout, I still want to be moving very cautiously and deliberately, as to not scare the fish away. As previously stated, the coral trout will be watching the other fish in the area to tell what the vibes are. I don't know if you could sense me or just took off, but I didn't see that trout again. A pattern that I'm starting to pick up on is that trout love these bommies. These rocks separate from the main reef, covered in life, covered in coral, these little oases the coral trout seem to congregate around. After giving it some time, we're making another descent once again onto the infamous trout cave. Heading right on in this time through the main front door, seeing if there's anything that's come back. As you approach the bottom and as you descend from the surface, the fish often get scared. It looks very unusual, a creature of such size going straight down to the bottom. It can often take some time once you're there for the fish to get comfortable and re-emerge from their hiding places. While initially you don't see any coral trout, you never know when one's going to appear. So it's worth sticking around, seeing what's happened, and you might as well make the most of it while you're down there.
By this point, having done multiple dives on the same spot in the past couple days, the trout have had enough, and it doesn't seem like they're sticking around in this spot anymore. I can't blame them, they must have seen it in my eyes that I was hungry for them. After a few hours of trying with no avail, I start heading back towards the boat, taking one last dive on the way. Our time here in the Whitsundays is drawing to a close, and this may be the last chance I get to go spearfishing. Under this bommy here, we got a couple crayfish tucked down there. I really did try my best to get the coral trout, but you don't always succeed. After trying multiple spots, multiple hours in the water every time trying to get onto these fish, I'm almost ready to accept defeat. So on this dive, I'm pretty much just having a scenic one, checking out these crayfish before turning my attention back onto the reef and seeing what's around. This may be one of the last times I'm underwater here in Australia, so I'm going to have a bit of a crawl across the bottom and see what we have. Not expecting much, just kind of cruising. We're way off the main reef structure, but there's still a few fish around. I have consistently found that coral trout like to hang around bommies such as this, so approaching it, I'm thinking this is my last chance, the last possible hope of getting the coral trout here in the Whitsundays. And nothing, no big fish lurking around the corner, stalking those little bait, absolutely nothing. So it's back to the surface, defeated, but hey, we had a good time while we're at it. But I catch a glimpse on my way. I halt my descent and push out back down towards the bottom and towards the coral trout. I approach the fish knowing I have no cover and knowing the fish could bolt at any moment. It does, but not very far. I line up and spine the fish. After spending so much time hunting these fish through underwater caves, over ledges, stalking and pursuing them, I didn't expect one to come to me on my way to the surface. On my very last dive here in the Whitsundays. Pretty unbelievable. What makes this fish special? They taste great. They're fun to hunt. But what really makes this fish special to me is the anticipation that went into it. To come out here with the goal of getting one of these fish, trying so hard and failing so many times to have it work out, that's what makes it special. With the fish secure, we can tick 2 boxes. We came out here, we got the dream fish, and we didn't have any misses. We didn't lose any fish in the process. The selectivity of spearfishing cannot be understated, which makes it my favourite form of catching fish. When done right, you don't injure anything that you don't plan to, and you don't catch anything you don't want to.
Oh, you got a tank? Coral trout. Nice. Shit, I didn't realise you'd hit anything that didn't float.
No, I didn't tell you about it. I just snuck it in there so I could surprise you.
That, by definition. Sorry. Let's see. So that's exactly 10 centimetres. Australians measure from the outside of the tail. 1. Make sure it's definitely inside. 1, 2, 3.
Bang on basically.
Give it one more shot just to make sure it's sure. Inside. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, less than a centimetre there, so she's about 39, 38 and a half.
What can I say, folks? Borderline piracy in the Whitsundays. This one, coral trout, barely scraping legal. But hey, that's a fish. That's a box tick. That's a dream fish right there. Stoked. Couldn't have happened any more perfectly for this trip, I guess. Everything kind of panning out in a weird way, but it's all working out as well. So pretty stoked on that one. It won't break any records, but this fish couldn't be happier about. Amazing eating on the barbecue as well. Chuck the scales on, fry them up. Incredible. One of the tastiest fish out there. Blue skies and blue water. And dolphins, how good. It wouldn't be a sailing trip without any actual sailing. The winds have been vicious this trip. Unprecedented. This time of year is meant to be the calmest, best time to come out here sailing in the Whitsundays. However, we were struck by some pretty awful weather towards the start of our journey. Here at the tail end, the weather has become very productive to what we want to get up to, which is putting the sail up and going for a sail. For a long time, it's been a goal to come out here, especially for my dad.
He's been talking about it for years and years. One day, gonna rent a boat out on the Whitsundays, sail it around. It's gonna be awesome. We're gonna go diving. The feeling of the boat with the sail up was very different from just motoring around using the engines. It felt almost like you were being pulled along as opposed to pushed. But the main difference was the sound. When you cut the engines and just rely on the sail, all you hear is the wind and the water on the keel. Whenever I'm on a boat, my favourite place to sit is at the front, where you feel the wind in your face and your view is unobstructed. You get to see the ocean expand out in a panorama encompassing your entire vision. We pull into a bay north of Whitehaven Beach. No trip to the Whitsundays would be complete without visiting Whitehaven. We're grabbing onto our mooring here. Our practice has maybe gotten a bit sloppy. After doing this a few times by now, maybe not taking it as seriously as we should be. Thinking we've mastered it and we're hearty sailors by this point, we neglect to check that we're actually on the right part of the mooring rope here. As opposed to putting the proper rope spliced part over the cleat, we've just put a bit of the normal rope around it.
Unwrapped the cord yet. I think we're good, yeah.
We're getting better.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we're good.
Might suddenly go, ooh.
While it is holding, we can see that the buoy isn't where it should be, which does cause some concern, but we disregard it. With the sun going down on a lovely day, we're scheduled for a great sunset. So we're going to head up this hill here on the northern end of the Whitehaven Beach and get a good scenic looking out over as the sun goes down.
Keep going, alright? Yeah, stop the toe. Yep.
With the tide right in and darkness setting upon the land, it's hard to see, but below the shallow waters in front of us lay one of the most amazing beaches on the entire planet. Whitehaven Beach is renowned for having some of the most pure sand in the world, almost entirely silica. In the Nara Dreamtime, long ago there were no islands, only the vast blue of the sea. One day the rainbow serpent passed through the water, laying her eggs as she went. Ancient observers of rising suns and setting moons, her eggs remain, the islands of which you stand today. This was a pretty cute moment, watching the sunset with the crew, some of my favourite people in the whole world.
Shout out to my friends here, the sharks. I wish I got to see some more of these this trip.
Marching back down through the forest and towards the beach, it is golden hour, and the glow is absolutely lovely. Not every evening out here is like this, and we had our fair share of rough evenings. But it makes you appreciate when it's like this. It's the contrast. It gives you appreciation. If we weren't out here when it's windy, rainy, all that sort of stuff, it doesn't make it as good when you get those stunning, perfect bluebird days. The next morning, we round the corner into the main Whitehaven Beach, taking the tender off Pirate Pete ashore where we drag it up and get to experience this amazing place. I don't mention it on the video, but walking down this beach was an incredibly painful experience for me. I'm not sure for what reason, but it seemed to bring on more symptoms of decompression illness, where I felt radiating pains coming from my back, almost like needles were being stabbed into me, moving down the backs of my arms and further out as they got worse. I was hoping I'd cleared all the symptoms, but during this event, it became very apparent to me that I was still experiencing them. We made it down the length of the beach, where we went through another forest and up onto a hill, where we got to look down from the other side, and into this other bay on the left. Incredible. While I was in the forest, I was feeling better, but while traversing the beach, I was in seriously excruciating pain. What should have been a pleasurable experience became anything but.
The fact that somebody could let it in a place as beautiful as this is absolutely astounding. How could you? How could you let yourself do that? Ignorance is unbelievable. It is not a given that you get to experience this world. It is a gift. Please never forget that. Your presence here is a present to yourself and the universe. Don't let your existence be in vain. Live to serve the world and the world will serve you. Don't let it be you, fam. I'll clean up after you, but I'd really prefer if you just did it yourself. I'd really prefer if we all just respected this place and worked together to keep it pristine and beautiful, because that's what we're here for. We can make this a better place. We are here for a reason. Never forget it.
At this point in the mission, it's our last full day out here on the ocean on Pirate Peak. So we're heading back into a spot closer to land, where in the next morning we're going to be waking up and taking the boat back to Airlie Beach, returning it, and hopefully getting a flight out of here.
Incredible. Catch you later.
So you can see the flash. No, come back. No. Oh, there it is.
Oh, camera never does it justice.
We spent overnight in a shallow bay called Dugong Bay, but what are the odds of actually seeing dugongs here, we thought. In the morning we woke up and you could hear them coming up to the surface breathing. There were dugongs literally like all around the boat, and you could just sit on the top, listen to them, occasionally get a glimpse. They were pretty shy, but they were all around the boat. It was pretty amazing. You don't really expect it. It's called Dugong Bay, but you're like, what are the odds of actually seeing a dugong, right?
It's been about 2 weeks since the diving incident, about a week after I was actually meant to leave the country, but due to experiencing symptoms of decompression illness, I had to extend the stay here. Didn't want to hop on a plane and go pop like a soda can. For quite a few days following my scuba dive, I was experiencing symptoms of decompression illness, primarily manifesting as stabbing pains, feeling like someone's pushing a needle into me. However, we're about a week past the symptoms and I'm happy to report that I'm feeling better. Got some flights booked for tomorrow, headed back to New Zealand, and I cannot wait to go home. I'll spend the last week pretty much trapped here in Australia, out on Airlie Beach, because if I hopped on a plane while experiencing decompression illness symptoms, there's potential for some real bad news. If you look into it, some pretty gnarly stuff. However, there are worse places, definitely worse places to be trapped than here at Airlie Beach. Pretty lovely scenery, lovely people, been getting amongst it and had a great time. However, home is where the heart is and I cannot wait to be back. Right up until the very day before my flights, I was still experiencing symptoms. So I was like very literally fearing for my health boarding that plane. So I didn't end up boarding it. And I'm rebooking my flights, staying a bit longer, playing it safe, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll make it back to New Zealand in one piece. But I'm feeling pretty good about it. I went against my instincts once, diving on that tank. I don't want to do that again because going against your instincts never really works out that well. If there is a takeaway from this little tale of decompression illness, let it be trust your gut, trust your instincts, never get tricked into believing that your physical body is invincible. The mind is strong, the spirit is strong, but the flesh is weak. Remember that. And you got to look after your physical body, because without it, you really don't have much power here in this world. I have regrets, of course, but we all have regrets, and that's something you sort of have to learn to live with. But from regrets comes the opportunity to learn and the opportunity to teach, hopefully. So let this tale of stupidity be a lesson to you. Hopefully. Don't do what I did, don't go against your instincts. If you're diving from a tank and it doesn't smell right, it's actually totally not worth it. But hey, as said before, worst places to be stuck, you know. Spending a week out here in Airlie Beach isn't so bad, but I want to go home. Like when you think you're about to go home and then it ends up being like a week later, missing your friends, missing your family, missing your girlfriend, missing your pets, missing the garden, missing New Zealand. I cannot wait. It is seriously a blessing to be able to walk upon this earth in a physical body. What an amazing feeling. To have the 5 senses and more and experience this world is a treat, man. But you got to look after it, because you can easily lose your place here.
This photo is from the day after I got back to New Zealand in the North Shore Emergency Department. Let me tell you about how my flights went. To get back from Airlie Beach to Auckland, had to take 2 flights. One from Proserpine to Brisbane and then from Brisbane to Auckland. Hopped on the one from Proserpine to Brisbane. Ascending, I was nervous, but the ascent was fine. When I reached altitude, felt perfectly fine. But it was during the descent where I encountered a pretty serious problem. As we began our descent, I felt my heart start to flutter. It started to have palpitations and an irregular beat. It was causing pain in my chest, and I just had to hold on and sit tight as the plane came back down to ground level. As we came back down to ground level, things kind of settled down for a bit, but I didn't feel good after that. Unfortunately, this is only the first of 2 flights, and international flights fly at a higher altitude and have a lower cabin pressure, resulting in more pressure changes and potentially even worse symptoms than I experienced on the first flight. My dad did ask me how I was feeling, but I just said that I felt fine. During the first flight, I did notice an increase in the symptoms when I was feeling stressed out or had higher blood pressure. So I had to think to myself when I was in the airport, what can I do to reduce my blood pressure before the next flight? Digestion. When you're digesting food, it brings blood away from other areas in your body to help with digestion. So in the airport, I tried to eat as much as possible, hoping to divert blood flow. The second flight was a very similar story to the first. Going up, I felt fine. At altitude, I felt fine. But as we started the descent, once again, I was having heart palpitations, chest pains, and an irregular heartbeat. Seriously worrisome stuff. I had no choice at that point just to sit through it until we made it back to ground level, where I could breathe a sigh of relief. However, the pains didn't subside really. That night at home when I was trying to sleep was so uncomfortable. My chest and heart did not feel right. The next day I was still in the same state, so I went with my dad and my girlfriend to the emergency department at North Shore Hospital. They plugged me into all the machines, checked me out, said I looked more or less okay. The symptoms do come and go, but I wasn't going to die from it. For the next month after that, I had to pretty much lay real low. There wasn't any diving for me. There wasn't really much physically exerting myself. I was just trying to take it easy and let myself recover. All of these events transpired a few months ago, and I'd like to think that nowadays I'm past all and back in better health. I've been out diving a lot again recently. All the footage that you're seeing now is from dives I've done since I've been back in New Zealand, and it's a pleasure to be back out there doing it. But it's a shame the mistake that I made, the terrible mistake that I made that you can hopefully learn from. A lot of things went into it, but a lot of things will hopefully come out of it as well. I really hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something, and I hope you don't make silly mistakes like I do in this video. Once again, just another big shout out to everyone that joined us on this journey, especially my dad. In that week that I was there in Airlie Beach, he stayed with me, helped look after me, helped me navigate all the sort of insurance-y hotel type things I'm not very good with. Legend, that guy. If you've made it this far into the video, congratulations, you have a fantastic attention span. I'd like to thank you for watching my videos. By simply watching them, you're supporting me. When I see the numbers go up, it makes me more inspired to do videos. But comments is what really helps. If you made it this far into the video, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know who's really watching it to the end. I appreciate it. It gives me the inspiration to make more videos like this. Often when you make a video, it can feel like you're putting so much work out, but it's just going into the void. But to know people are actually taking on the messages, learning something from it, it makes it all worth it from my perspective. But until next time, have a great life. Enjoy yourself. Have fun. Get out there. Go spearfishing. Spend time with the people you love and let them know that you love them. Cheers. Enjoy.